Welcome back. Today I'm going to analyze my last few rapid games on Lichess. For me, it's been 3 days since the last video, so I have 3 games to look at, and I lost all 3 of them, so hopefully we'll be able to learn something. I have pulled up last night's game here. I resigned here, even though I typically don't resign in rapid games. I go ahead and play it out and, force my opponent to checkmate me. But here, it was pretty obvious. If I moved my queen out of danger, they were going to get the rook for the knight, and I wasn't sure where I could move the queen out of danger to take back the knight, except maybe over here to b7. And somehow my opponent's already got, 2 rooks on open files. They've got a bishop pointed here. And I don't know how I messed up. It says I made 2 mistakes. My opponent also made 2 mistakes, but their mistakes came a little later. Oh, so did mine. So according to this chart, I was already behind when I made my 2 mistakes. All right, excellent. That's usually a sign that I'm not going to learn something, that I was already behind here when I made this mistake. It was plus 1.5. So where were my inaccuracies? Oh, I had a bunch of them. Well, that's a little depressing. It takes a little of the wind out of my sails. We might as well start at the beginning and see what went wrong here. Let's turn on the engine and just go. My opponent played d4, which I have typically had trouble against. I've been playing d5 as the response to that. I'm going to open the opening book here just out of curiosity. And my opponent didn't play one of the most common moves here. They played this, which it says it's the queen's pawn game, but to me this resembles is it the Collier system? Is that what that's called, where you end up just with a triangle like this? I'm not sure. But it says my best move is knight to f6, and that's what most masters play, and that's what I played. So, so far so good. Again, my opponent didn't play one of the most common moves. They just put this bishop here, which seemed a little odd to me. I thought they were going to put it, on this longer diagonal, but they just put it in front of the king. We're supposedly even, and only 3 master games have reached this position. 2 of them played e6 here, and 1 played bishop to f5. All right, what about the Lichess Players database? That usually has quite a few more games. Yes, 240,000. They also have played e6 here, knight to c6, bishop to f5, c5. Okay, I didn't think of c5. I might have played that. That's one of the top 2 moves here. Or b6, Stockfish said would be fine. Okay, some people play g6, so I'm not alone here. I played g6 and, hoping to fianchetto this before committing the e-pawn and, castling. Knight to f3, we're still even. It looks like bishop to g7 is the top move by Stockfish and the top move in the Lichess Players database, and I thought right before I looked at the move list that that's what I would have played here, but if I was playing this game right now, that's what I would have played. But it says I played knight b to d7. Isn't that great? My opponent should play c4 or castle. They castled. So still, so far so good. Now bishop to g7? No, what? Okay, c5 is there as well. Well, it was there for a second. Okay, now I played c5. Okay, that explains why I put this knight here, to protect the c5. Stockfish would have played it earlier, but now it says, it's too late. The engine would just play c4 here, and Lichess Players might also play c4 or b3, but this opponent just took the pawn, and I took back with the knight, so still, so far so good. We're coming up to the point of one of my opponent's inaccuracies, which was the first inaccuracy of the game. They played a3. I assumed that the reason they did that was so that they could play b4, and I was happy to put my knight back where it was, but I should not have. I should have left it there and played bishop to g7 again. And I would have been ahead by half a point here. I don't know why the search box opened up there. I don't want the search box to ever open up, and I wish there was a way to disable that. And it looks like all the Lichess database players who have reached this position did play bishop to g7 here. Okay. Well, as I said, I would have played it a long time ago if I was playing, this game today, but instead I brought the knight back thinking they were about to attack it and thinking this is a good spot for it. It defends that knight. It also defends my e-pawn pushing forward, which I was thinking about doing. My opponent played b4 here, which doesn't seem quite as effective now that the knight's not in the way, but I should play bishop to g7. Okay, again, I probably would play that if I were playing this game today, but I had just put this knight here with the intention of protecting the e5 push, so I played e5. That's my second inaccuracy in a row. My opponent is almost up +1 if they'll put this bishop here or get this knight out. And they did one of those, so they're fine. Now they have 2 pieces aimed at this, so I need to push it forward according to the engine, and I did. One of my opponent's better moves to get the knight out of danger, and it's controlling 2 squares deep into my territory. Now I did play my best move, or one of my best moves, bishop to d7. All right, still, so far so good. My opponent has a very slight advantage. It looks like I'm going to be able to castle. I'm controlling some squares in the center of the board, not to mention, guarding these squares. I thought I was doing okay. They can play c4 here or knight to d2. They played knight to d2. And now I should castle or play queen to e7. Well, I definitely wouldn't have thought of queen to e7, but again, looking at this game, with today's perspective, I think I should have castled here, although I have been more and more hesitant to castle lately because I castle and then I get destroyed. Anyway, I played a6 here. thinking perhaps that either the bishop or the knight was thinking of coming in this way, but that turns out to be not great, although it wasn't horrible. My opponent's best move is c4, they played that. And now I'm supposed to castle, and I did. Oh, for a second there it said +1. Okay, still 0.8. My opponent should play queen to b3 or rook to c1, but instead they took that pawn. So now they're a pawn ahead, and should I take it back? No, I should not take it back. Oh, okay, so that was another inaccuracy on my part. I should have played rook to e8. Oh, because if I take that pawn back, this one's not defended anymore. Okay, see, I do understand this. It says before taking that pawn, defend the one that you're about to undefend when you take back their d-pawn. Or knight to b6. That would have given me a different attacker on their d-pawn. But it says I wouldn't take it, so never mind then. I thought I understood. In none of those situations would I take this d-pawn. I'm just a pawn down, and I'm not supposed to take it back. Okay, well, but I do understand why taking wasn't great, because it gives up this one. They are supposed to take it, and now I am down more than +1. Queen to e7 again. Again, I wouldn't find it. I don't want to put my queen out in front of stuff, or take away a spot that my knight might need to run away to. But knight 7 to f6 is one of my top 2 moves here, and I did choose that one. Thought we could trade off knights here, and I'm still just a pawn down. So that's what I played, and they can take it, or they can just drop this back. The engine might drop it back, but they took, which is fine, and I took back, and I'm just down 1.5, 1.4. Okay, queen to b3 for my opponent, and the engine says knight to e4 is my best move. What does knight to e4 do? Is it aiming for this fork? Okay, maybe that's what it is. It's just threatening this fork. But wouldn't they, it says they would just drop their queen back to defend against the fork and attack the knight, but then I would play rook to e8 to defend the knight. That's my best move. Knight to e4. I think they might leave their queen where they put it because they wanted it there, which is why they put it there. I think they might move a rook over to prevent the fork. And then what's my knight doing out here in the front? I don't know. Not sure. It says I could also play queen to e7, but instead I played b5. That's a mistake. My first mistake. As you can see, I was already behind more than +1 before my first mistake, but it looked like they had a bunch of pieces pointed right there. Looked like they were about to push this b-pawn, and I can stop them from pushing it by playing my b-pawn. But that's a huge mistake because of bishop to f3, which attacks my rook. They didn't see it until several moves later. Looks like 3 or 4 moves later. But they played their second best move, which is rook f to d1, which is what I thought they would have played if I had played my best move, this knight move. See, that's weird. Oh, wow. That feels like something that a bot would do. And I'm not saying they were cheating. I'm talking about the bots on chess.com that make random mistakes. And very often one of those mistakes is assuming that it knew what you wanted to do and then getting ready to play this move. So even when I don't play that, it does this thing anyway. Yeah, rook 8, queen to c2 or rook a to d1. Oh, rook a to d1. Okay. But again, not saying that the opponent was looking at an engine, just saying that it reminds me of those kinds of things that bots do. It says, oh, what if he puts this knight here? That's their best move. I can defend against the fork here. But I didn't put the knight there. After they played b3, I played b5, and then my opponent did this. Now, it is one of their better moves, their second best move. It's just not as good as bishop to f3. But I don't know why that's their second best move since I didn't put the knight in there. It lines up with my queen. Okay, well, I saw that and I thought I should move it. The engine thinks I should go to b6 or e8. Not e7 this time. It said e7 earlier, but not now. But I did think I had to move it. I just moved it to the wrong place. I put it here. And that's bad because of this. Well, now I went to b6, but that's bad now because of bishop to f3. Okay, that's what they should have played. Wait, wouldn't I have just moved the rook? It says I wouldn't. Yeah, the engine says if they played bishop to f3, I would play bishop to d7, and then they would take my rook. Well, that's why they put the bishop there. Okay. Well, I don't understand that either, but I'm way behind here, so it probably doesn't matter. My opponent decided to just go after my queen. Anyway, that's what they did the last 2 turns, so they just put their rook here. Now, that's inaccurate, but they're still way ahead. I mean, it's protected. My queen has to go somewhere. The engine thinks just back 1 or back 2 here, but not where I went, which is here. And Stockfish would throw away the rook for the knight at this point. And when I took back, then they would play here, which would, of course, skewer and get the rook anyway when I moved my queen. That's why I wasn't supposed to put the queen in line with this. My opponent didn't know they were supposed to give away the rook first, so they just went ahead and put the bishop there now. Well, and of course, I saw this coming. Why else would they have put the bishop there? So I got my queen out of danger, and it is my best move to go to e7, which is where I should have put it a long time ago, apparently. And again, the engine says they should give up the rook for this knight. And when I take it, then they'll take the rook and they'll be up +4. But they just brought the rook back, and I'm supposed to, okay, why didn't I find that? This is my second mistake of the game, not finding that. I could have found that. It's protected by the queen? What would they have played? Oh, it says they would have played knight to c6, which keeps my bishop from facing their bishop, but attacks my queen, so I would have had to have moved my queen. It says I probably would have moved it here, and then they would have taken that. I don't know. I saw that my rook was under attack, and I moved it, and of course they hopped there really quickly. I'm going to look at the clock here. Yeah, 2 seconds. So they knew that that was a possibility. They were ready for it. Good job to my opponent. I didn't see any point in continuing here. The engine says queen to b7, and then they would not take my rook. Says they would play bishop to d4 at that point, which points at the rook so that I couldn't take back when they took it. Oh my goodness. I don't know if my opponent would have found that. I'm guessing if I had played here, they would have taken the rook, and then I would have taken back, and I would have been down in exchange with, as previously mentioned, all these pieces pointed down, across here. Okay, so no, let's see. Right here is the only point at which I had a very slight advantage. And yeah, I do understand this. That's what I should have played. There's no question in my mind that I should have played that. And then if they played b4, it says that they wouldn't, but if they had played b4, I then could have brought the knight back and I'd have been ready to castle. Okay, well that took a long time, but I'm going to go ahead and look at the next game. In the previous night's game, I got checkmated here on move 80-something, 88. But, a lot of that last part was the end game of me just staying out of check and my opponent taking quite a while to checkmate me. But I was never had in this one. I went behind really early in the opening, it looks like. Let's see if I can figure out what went wrong. I'm going to click the Z key so I don't have any hints over there in the right column. Okay, my opponent took back here, and it says I played e5. What should I have played? Should I have gotten the other knight out? I have no idea what I should have done instead of e5. Okay, well, let's just turn this back on then. I should have played e6. Oh, okay. Or a6 would have been okay. But e5 is an inaccuracy that puts my opponent up a little bit, but only if they play b5 or g4. G4, really? Okay, well, my opponent didn't find that move, but they did find bishop to b5, which pins this knight, so the knight's not defending that pawn anymore. Okay, well, that's probably why I should have put it on e6. I think I understand that, because that's the only thing defending the pawn. And Stockfish says I should defend that pawn with my queen here. Oh, well, why is this bad? Because I was developing a piece and defending, but okay, it undefends this pawn. That's probably what it is. I thought I was defending my e-pawn since my knight wasn't defending it anymore, but that allows them to take here. And my opponent's only blunder of the game was castling. Wow. Well, so if you're ever wondering whether or not you should castle, don't, I guess, because it's a blunder sometimes. My best move is knight to e7, which does defend that pawn, so I must have realized that I had undefended it, and I was glad that they didn't take it. I did play knight to e7, so that pawn, all those things are defended now. My opponent played their best move, which adds another attacker to this pawn, and I need to play queen to d7. Ooh, I don't like that, getting in the way of that. Or e4, okay. I think I could have found e4. That tells their queen to go back home, but it doesn't say what would happen after that. I'm getting a lot of these lately where it'll only show me the first move or in this case, the first two, but then the engine thought it wasn't worth looking at afterward. Okay, so if I played here, is it still, no, it's not going to say queen to d1, is it? Queen to e2. And for a second there, it said h5. Okay, so let's say that they went all the way back like it said at the beginning. And now I would castle or bishop to e5. But I didn't find that, or queen to d7, which I don't know what queen to d7 does. I do understand what this does. It keeps them from being able to take my d-pawn. Queen to d7 does not do that. Oh, maybe it allows me to castle over here? I don't know. But I castled, and that's the blunder that I never recovered from. So again, if you're wondering whether or not you should castle, for both my opponent and I, in this game, it was a blunder to castle. But I think I do understand this. Okay, this was not a mistake, but I do understand that because when they play here, that I can't defend that pawn anymore, so I should have just played e6, especially since my light squared bishop's already gone. I already gave up my light squared bishop, so I don't have to worry about the French bishop thing and being stuck back here. I already got rid of it. I can find that, and I can be, more aware of how easy it is to pin here, and that's why I guess a6 is my next best move. But my second mistake, I think I also understand. After they pinned here, I needed to defend it up this way. Queen to d6 defends both of these pawns. When I played the bishop out there, it only defended one of those pawns and gave up the other one. This way my queen continues to defend the d-pawn and defends there. It says they would go ahead and take, and I would take back with the pawn. Well, right, because if I took with the queen, then I gave up one of the pawns. But my opponent would still be fairly ahead. They just wouldn't be as ahead as they were for me going here, which didn't matter because my opponent blundered. And then after this, I blundered by castling. But yeah, castling is what lost me the game, according to the graph. I never got close again after castling. Wow. I just kept looking through this game and I found another blunder and another mistake by me, but this graph down here only lists one blunder. So what's going on? Yeah, it says I have 2 blunders here in the end game. 3. 1, 2, 3, and a mistake in the end game plus castling. So I had 4 blunders, but only 1 is listed. And normally when you hover over these words, it pops up little dots on the graph, but it did not do that today for some reason for me or my opponent. That's weird. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the site. I'm going to try to refresh this page and see if I can fix this. Okay, now when I hover over the one blunder that it says, it shows 4 dots on the graph. And when I hover over my 2 mistakes, it shows my 2 mistakes. And 7 inaccuracies, but it looked like none of those really mattered except for E5. But yeah, I had some blunders late in the game. Let's see, here on move 68, I should not have done that. I was just down it said +7 when I first clicked on it, but now it says mate in 18. And I should have played rook to A8. But the game review thought that me taking this pawn and checking made checkmate now unavoidable, but here, obviously, the engine thinks checkmate's unavoidable before I took the pawn. Okay, so not that bad of a mistake. I mean, it went from mate in 18 to mate in 12. I can live with that. The reason I was looking at this is to see if my opponent missed any quick mates, but I don't think that they did. They got as close as a mate in 7 here, but then they didn't mate me in 7. And this blunder here, I'm gonna look at that. If we go here, that was not a blunder. Okay. In this case, it was one of my 2 moves that was best. I could have played king to E6 or king to F7. Both of those were best. Not a blunder. Okay, so that one was a weird thing that Stockfish needs to work on. Then down here, they had a mate in 4. This one also I don't think should be counted as a blunder. It says checkmate is now unavoidable. King to G7 was best, but king to G7 gives us a mate in 4, and king to H6 gives us a mate in 3. That's pretty close. Either way, it's mate in just a few moves. Okay, so maybe inaccurate. Okay, they should have played king to F6, at least on this move. Good job to my opponent. And earlier in the game, good job to them for finding what they found. Here, I feel bad for them. The castling was counted as a blunder. Maybe they've reviewed this game and, saw that they should have taken that pawn instead. But yeah, I do understand a few of the things in the opening of this game. It is a little frustrating to know that, I was this far behind so early. And then I played like another 70 moves just to see if my opponent knew how to checkmate me, and they did. So, good job to this opponent as well. I don't have time to go on to the game from the previous night. Well, this was a little more productive than these analyses usually go, so I'm happy about that. Thank you for spending your time here. I'll see you next time.